In the name of the Father, Son, Holy Spirit. Amen. Oh, heavenly King, the Comforter, the Spirit of truth, who art everywhere and all these treasures of blessings and given of life. Come, Lord, and cleanse us from every impurity and save our souls, O God.
Is for yet you is for time.
Welcome,
Many years to all of you. Many years
Diocese.
to all of you.
Welcome to the Diocese of New York and New Jersey Christian Education Workshops. This year, we joyfully feature our newest saint, Saint Olga of Alaska, a gentle mother, a holy Matushka, getting to know Saint Olga of Alaska. And this is part one, Voices of Alaska. Welcome, Your Eminence Archbishop Michael, who is graciously joining us by phone, the clergy of the Diocese of New York and New Jersey, church school teachers and youth workers, and our special guest, Father Michael Nikolai, Zooming from St. Herman's Seminary on Kodiak Island, Alaska. I see a lot of familiar names from past Christian education workshops, new teachers and friends and family. Thank you all for taking the time for this special class. Now, please mute your audio if you haven't already. There will be an opportunity at the end of the class to ask questions. To begin, Archbishop Michael is going to share a bit of the canonization process with us. Vladika, the microphone is yours.
Thank you. Glory to Jesus Christ, glory Father. It's a joy to speak about this incredible experience that I've had as being a part of the canonization process. Of course, the Orthodox Church in America is the only church on this continent that is authorized to make saints or to proclaim saints. And so it was our privilege this time. I was involved minutely as a priest when St. Alexis Toth and St. Raphael of Brooklyn were canonized, but I, as a bishop, I was on the ground level of this, and it was a great honor and a privilege for me and the other bishops of our synod. So the process begins really when at the local church, at the local level. In the Roman tradition, they get someone who has done supposedly 2 miracles. They check it out, and the Pope declares it. We have a more intimate process. It begins at the local level, in this case in Alaska. This woman, as you'll hear, obviously lived a very holy, pious life. Helped an innumerable number of people. Were loved by the people that she helped and prayed for and assisted delivering babies. And so her life, of course, was already considered a holy life. But there have been experiences after her death that continue to show her helping others in need, people who were sick, people who had trouble delivering their children, people who had trouble getting pregnant, and women who were abused. And so the stories begin to accumulate about this woman. And in fact, they are the proof, the 15 miracles that we've listed. And they are, there are other little things that she did that we didn't include, but those miracles are shared and told. And eventually, when it's time to say this woman is a saint, it goes before the bishop of the diocese, in this case, Bishop Alexei. And he gathered the information. Of course, he went through it, interviewed the people, took down the stories, and then brought it to the Holy Synod. And the Holy Synod has a canonization committee that was chosen by His Beatitude, headed by Archbishop Daniel of Chicago, who oversaw the examination of those miracles, authenticating them and evaluating them, and of course, eventually compiling them into her life story, her life both on this side of the grass and on the side of death, and that eventually was agreed that we would consider it, and so his Grace Bishop Alexei made a formal request for that process of canonization to begin officially, and the bishops examined all of the information, and we certainly found those miracles very cogent signs that she is in fact alive and hidden in Christ with God, and as St. Paul says. And so this remarkable woman who did, very, very everyday things. I mean, her house was open to the church, like Lydia in Philippi, first convert family, and her and her household were the first converts in Europe. She sewed clothes, winter clothes. You'll hear in the stories for people in the very cold of Alaska, just like Tabitha, or who had died, and the people begged Peter, and he brought her back to life. So the very basic things that she did in life were now even outshined by the miracles that people testify to. And so we got a meeting together of the synod, and it was a unanimous agreement that this, in fact, has been revealed to us, that she is a saint. We don't make her saints. We acknowledge, we glorify her as a saint. The record of her good works and her miracles after death are the proof. And so the Holy Synod proclaimed her in this proclamation of the Holy Synod of Bishops of the Orthodox Church in America on the glorification of the righteous servant of God, Matushka Olga. And so this reads, in the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, to the beloved clergy, monastics, and faithful of the Orthodox Church in America, God is wonderful in His saints. The Holy Synod of Bishops of the Orthodox Church in America has heard the petition of the Right Reverend Alexei, Bishop of Sitka and Alaska, expressed in his November 2nd, 2023 letter to his Beatitude Metropolitan Tikhon concerning the glorification of the servant of God, the righteous Matushka Olga. In his letter, His Grace Bishop Alexei states, I am writing to your Beatitude with respect to the departed handmaiden of God and faithful Orthodox Christian Matushka Olga Michael of Kwethluk, known by pious peoples of the Kushwakim as Arsem Kuch. Her humility, her generosity, her piety, her patience, and her selfless love for God and neighbor were well known in the Kushwakim villages during her earthly life. Her care for comforting the suffering and the grieving has also been revealed after her life by grace-filled manifestations to the faithful throughout not only Alaska, but all of North America. The first peoples of Alaska were convinced of her sanctity and the great efficacy of her prayers. For this reason, after prayerful consideration, I, Alexei, Bishop of Sitka and Alaska, am hereby making the formal request of your Beatitude as Primate of the Orthodox Church in America to begin the process that, if it is in accord with God's will, would lead to her glorification. The Holy Synod, having prayerfully reflected upon this petition and having observed and acknowledged the sincere devotion among the faithful of Alaska and beyond, has unanimously determined that the time for the glorification of Matushka Olga has arrived, fulfilling the hopes and prayers of pious Orthodox Christians throughout Alaska and the entire world. Therefore, meeting in the solemn assembly of the Holy Trinity Cathedral in Chicago, Illinois, under the presidency of the Most Blessed Tikhon, Archbishop of Washington, Metropolitan of all American Canada, we, the members of the Holy Synod of the Orthodox Church in America, do hereby decide and decree that the ever-memorable servant of God, Matushka Olga, be numbered among the saints. With one mind and one heart, we also resolve that her honorable remains be considered as holy relics, that a special service be composed in her honor, that her feast be celebrated on October 27th, November 9th, Old Style, and the Feast of All Saints of North America, the second Sunday after Pentecost. The holy icons be prepared to honor the newly glorified saint in accordance with the canons of the sacred ecumenical and regional councils, that her life be published for the edification of the faithful, that the name of the new saint be communicated to the primates of all sister churches for inclusion on their calendars, and the date and location of the rite of glorification be communicated to the clergy, monastics, and faithful of our church in the future. Further, we entrust to the Canonization Commission of the Orthodox Church in America, under the chairmanship of the Most Reverend Daniel, Archbishop of Chicago and the Midwest, with the honorable task of assisting the Right Reverend Alexei, Bishop of Sitka in Alaska, preparing for the celebration of the glorification by providing an authorized life of Matushka Olga for the education and edification of the faithful, with overseeing the painting of holy icons of her in keeping with the canonical iconographical tradition of the church, with the composition of liturgical texts to be sung at the divine services in which she will be commemorated, and with assisting in the uncovering and recognition of her holy relics, and in promoting her veneration among all the clergy, monastics, and faithful of our church. We call upon the faithful to remember Matushka Olga and memorial services in litanies for the departed when appropriate until the day of her glorification. The prayers of Matushka Olga and of all the saints who have shown forth in North America, may the Lord grant his mercies and blessings to all who seek her heavenly intercession with faith and love. Amen. Holy Mother Olga, pray to God for us. And it's given at Holy Trinity Cathedral this 8th day of November in the year of our Lord 2023, and signed by Metropolitan Tikhon and the Holy Synod of the Archbishops and Bishops of the Orthodox Church in America. And so the date was set for the glorification. First of all, after this, a date was arrived at to uncover the relics. Then her body had to be exhumed. When she had died, one of the signs of many of the faithful was she died in November when it's very cold, the ground is frozen. But in her case, the ground was not frozen, so they could actually bury her. After she had died. For her funeral, there were birds singing above the church that had been her spiritual home, her life, and in the cemetery where her husband was buried. And the birds go south much earlier than November, and they were there. And once the service was over, they disappeared. So when they exhumed the body, once the ground was soft, His Grace oversaw the getting of the relics, and the clergy dug her grave, opened it, and brought up the coffin. And of course, because the coffin is simple wood, and the weather there is so severe, and no doubt because of, there was no a vault or anything to protect it. So there was, obviously there was dirt and water in the coffin there had been. And so when her relics were exhumed, they were brought by His Eminence and into the church. She was the relics were washed with with rose oil, and she was redressed properly. And some of the things that were hers, actually, her daughters still had them. So many of the like the blankets and the cloth that covered her face, and because originally she had been dressed in her wedding dress, she was redressed, and the reliquary was made by the nuns of Conestoga in California. The reliquary bears an etching of her icon and the prayer, "Holy God, Holy Mighty, Holy Immortal, have mercy on us." And so she was exhumed and placed in the church until the time had come. And then when we got there in June to the village, we served the very last panakita for her. Her coffin was placed over the place where she had been buried. Of course, the ground was covered now, and there was a platform there, and his beatitude offered that final panakita. It was sung in all of the dialects of Alaska, and as you can imagine, there were birds singing above her. And people were full of joy. They sang from their hearts. It was, I've been in 17 different countries for Orthodox services, never had an experience like this. The people of that village came out, and the village doubled in size with pilgrims who had come for this. And they were so grateful that we were acknowledging, their mother to be a saint. And they were so grateful that we were having this service in their village and keeping her relics in the village. After that panakita was finished, she was transported to the very porch of the church. I had the privilege, as the secretary of the synod, to read that proclamation proclaiming her a saint. And as I looked up, I could see the faces of hundreds of people from that village with tears of joy. And then her relics were brought into the church for veneration and opened up at the vigil. And throughout the vigil, that afternoon and evening, hundreds upon hundreds of people came to venerate her. And I just happened to look up. The choir was singing at the vigil, and for the first time when they sang, Holy Mother Olga, you could see the tears coming from people's face, tears of joy that this beloved woman had become glorified as a saint. And so all night, so I think from 4 o'clock to 9:30, 10 o'clock, everybody came to venerate, and then the next morning at the liturgy, the same thing. The next day, her relics were taken to the cathedral in Anchorage, where again, even more people were able to, thousands of people were able to venerate her on that Saturday and Sunday. The synod agreed to keep the reliquary of the saint in Alaska, and in the village where she had lived. And so, as happens, because time, 1979, she reposed. When they were removing the relics, there was some breakage already. Little bones had either from dropping the coffin in or lifting it or whatever. And so those were used as the relics. There are 2 main relics. One is in the possession of the Diocese of Alaska. The other one is in the possession of the National Church. The Orthodox Church in America's Beatitude often brings it with him when he visits parishes. In fact, I just had a parish with a significant anniversary celebration, and they brought the reliquary, the small reliquary, with a relic of St. Olga to the celebration that we had in Trenton, New Jersey. Bishop Alexei did give a small quantity of relic to each of the bishops that will be distributed by each bishop in wherever. I mean, it remains how many parishes you have, how many, times you can divide that among the parishes. But those relics, no doubt. I mean, I have a parish, a mission that was established, St. Olga of Alaska. So certainly, in that church, there will be a small relic and a reliquary of St. Olga. And so I would say, it's important for us as the Church in America to take pride in the fact that we have a Native American, a Yupik woman, a woman saint, the first woman saint of the Orthodox Church in America, who was a woman of family, a woman of simple life, who served her village, her church, her people, and that we venerate her this coming Monday, which is her feast day on the new calendar, and tell the world, that. And her miracles, I think, are really impressive. I'm sure you're going to talk about those. I'm only talking about the canonization process, but I think that it's a great honor that we have that experience of being able to do that. I want to say just a couple other things. When Herman of Alaska, the first saint of America, was canonized, the Alaskan state was not really too concerned about it. I mean, they didn't make a big deal out of it. I don't think they hardly acknowledged it. Of course, I wasn't there, but what I read. But in this case, the state senate sent a woman representative to read the proclamation. With great pride, they acknowledge, the first woman saint of America is an Alaskan. And I think that's great recognition for the Orthodox Church in America, and especially for the Diocese of Alaska, the mother diocese of all of us in this country. And so that recognition, Associated Press carried the story. Of course, there was live and videoed coverage of the event, and it really did, put us on the map in a very positive light at a time when, you have two Orthodox countries fighting each other. That publicity is not so good, but this certainly captured the eyes of many people in America and the world. Okay, I'm sure I've exceeded my time as always. Thank you for the opportunity. You're going to field questions at the end, right?
Yes. Thank you very much, Vladika.
You're very welcome. Listen, I really would urge all of you, especially if you're church school teachers, to share this. I mean, what it is to be a saint. We think of some, great Holy Father, theologian or healer, but this woman just did all the right things in the humblest of ways. And so it gives all of us hope to be at least small s saints. I want you to teach that to your kids in church school, and let them say with pride, especially the girls, that among the first is a woman saint from Alaska. God bless you all. God keep you. God ever love you. Glory to Jesus Christ.
Glory
Forever.
Many years to all of you.
Archbishop Michael has asked that I share a bit of my own upbringing in Alaska. I produce the workshops. I have never been the speaker, so I didn't realize what a difficult but emotional task it would be to encapsulate how Alaskan Orthodoxy has formed me. It's a way of being, a mindset, not easy to put into words. Native Alaskans have a way of talking about themselves without being perceived as prideful, because what you say to others or how you act is a representation of your family. I will attempt to do this with honor. I am Matushka Tamara Cowan, wife of Father David, mother of Gabriel, and daughter of Archpriest Nicholas and Matushka Anastasia Molodico Harris, and descendant of many faithful Slavic Orthodox ancestors. My dad pastored parishes in Pottstown, Pennsylvania, and Baltimore, Maryland, then was sent to the Diocese of Alaska in 1967 to build an Orthodox church in Anchorage, the largest city, that did not have a parish. At that time, the population was about 100,000. Anchorage was and still is a hub for Native Alaskans for medical care, shopping, and seasonal living. My pregnant mother packed up my two brothers and all our belongings. Fast forward, and there in Anchorage, I was born in 1968. I grew up a priest kid in a big, loving family with 6 children, 4 brothers, and 1 little sister who I felt was my gift. I grew up watching our parish blossom, having services in the basement of our house, then a small church being built in the backyard, and then over the next 20 years, it grew into a cathedral. This structure was completed in 1992, and ours was the first wedding in the newly completed St. Innocent Cathedral. I am not a scholar or an Alaskan Natives culture expert. All of my learning is experiential. But in my village of St. Innocent Church, I had excellent teachers. I was raised in my church family made up of Yupik, Aleut, Alutiiq, Tlingit, and Athabaskan Native Alaskans. In church, I learned to sing all of these languages. Native Alaskans are dancers. They dance to tell a story or an important truth. So they danced as they sang in the choir. The choir was my happy place. Surrounded by their joy, I learned to love the liturgy. Because their culture embraces timeless time as a way of being, I learned to love the full-length services, even the vigil. There was a full schedule of services, and it wasn't just our family attending the services, but services were regularly attended by many who loved being in church. I learned that being with elders was an honor to cook with them, to clean God's house with them, and to enjoy never-ending preparations of hospitality and charity. From my earliest memories, I was accepted as a full-fledged member of the choir and the sisterhood. I learned patience and compassion as I went with my elders to visit their sick families coming from villages to be cared for in Anchorage at the busiest and largest Native medical center in the state. When you live in Orthodox Anchorage, The whole state is your village. For 3 summers, my family lived in a fish camp village as my father joined the crew of an Aleut priest commercial fishing boat. He needed to supplement our family income as our mission parish was still young. Alaskan weather is unpredictable, and subsistence life has many challenges. There, in the fishing village, I learned to live simply, be flexible, and receive the day as it comes. Many village parishes did not have a priest, and so my father, as dean of the region, visited a different village by small airplane each week. The times that I accompanied him on these trips to these poor villages, I learned perspective and thankfulness. As I speak, my heart is flooded with memories of so many wonderful people who formed me. So many of them have passed on. May their memories be eternal. I am ever grateful to my parents for answering that call from Alaska. Alaska is special, and there is so much we can learn from this culture to get along better in our culture, to be better Orthodox Christians in this chaotic world. Our objective tonight is not to learn St. Olga's facts. There are many well-written versions of the life of St. Olga you can read, and they will be included on the resource list at next week's class. My goal is for you to learn who St. Matushka Olga is, what she is all about, by hearing the voices of her people. We are blessed that God gave us people who actually knew her. In this way, we will get a closer look into the Alaskan Native Orthodox mindset. Before we listen to these Yupik voices, it is helpful to visualize where they are from. The big red dot is Kwethluk, home of St. Olga. On this map, the village of Kwethluk is in green on the far right. The recent catastrophic flooding pathway is in red. The upriver part of the flooding, where the red line ends, that's about 20 miles from Kwethluk. Glory to God, Kwethluk was not hit by flooding, but the villagers there are now busy helping to feed and house thousands of evacuees. Thousands of people have lost their homes, and even our church of St. Michael in Quigilinuk was taken from its foundation and torn and carried down the river. What sorrow they must have. May the Lord have mercy. After class, I will post a donation link if you would like to help. Here is the village church in Kwethluk, where the reliquary of St. Olga resides, and the glorification services for St. Olga were held. Here is the glorification service. You can see all of the bishops, and Archbishop Michael is venerating St. Olga. For the video interviews we are about to watch, please turn up your sound, as the Yupik are soft-spoken people. Our first interview is with Matushka Ksenia Alexa. She is the widow of beloved Archpriest Michael Alexa of blessed memory. who tirelessly worked for many years to research and present Matushka Olga Michael as a candidate for sainthood. Father Michael is a longtime family friend who, together with my own father, served at our wedding. And when I was a teenager, he opened my mind to the Orthodox faith during his days of teaching at the University of Alaska. Father Michael served many parishes throughout Alaska. May his memory be eternal. Matushka Ksenia is Yupik, born and raised in the village of Kwethluk. Her family was very close with St. Olga's family, like she was raised with St. Olga's daughters. She lovingly remembers, as far back as 3 years old, staying many nights over at St. Olga's house and waking up to the smell of sourdough pancakes. In this video, Matushka Ksenia will share an experience of a visitation from St. Olga months after St. Olga had reposed.
And then had an experience of when Father left, I usually had the two girls sleep by me. And then John in his crib, one room down from us. And I had this, like I was half asleep and half awake, kind of being in that stage. And then I heard our front door open and close, and the inside door open and close. Then a person started going through the living room, a small living room, and then down the hall, and came, and then I didn't have the door closed in our room, and came into our room, and stood at the foot of our bed. And I was telling myself, open your eyes and see what that is. But I felt like too I was dreaming. And then that person said, finally I'm here. I've been coming to you guys for a very long time, and I'm finally here. And it was Matushka Olga's voice talking in Yupik. And then she lay down at the foot of our bed, my bed. And that's when I opened my eyes, and of course, she wasn't there. So it was like a half dream or half vision, I don't know. So the next day after we woke up, Katrina started running around saying, I'm Olga, I'm Olga. That she was Ma Olga. And we never talked about what's the Olga. But she, in the Yupik way, when a person passes away, the baby after that is named for that person. Either her Yupik name or both, or English given name. Like I'm named for a very old lady that passed away. And so I have her Yupik name, Anna, which is mother, and her given name, Ksenia. I also have another Yupik name, my uncle's name, on my father's side, my father's brother, Akash. So I have two Yupik names and my name, like her name, Ksenia. So, and from then on, she would tell people, I'm Ma Olga. She wouldn't say Aksamo. She would say, I'm Ma Olga. And then there's a Yupik way of thinking. When that happens, they say that person who has passed away, her, like it's her personality has gotten like into her. It's not something scary or whatever.
What would you like children to know about Matushka Olga's life or her way?
Oh, well, she was very loving, a loving person. She loved everybody. Um, she wasn't an imposing person. She was like someone that she would say something to them, and if they didn't listen to her, no, she didn't push it. She wasn't, or demanding, I should say. She's a very quiet person and very kind and very giving of what food they had, because she would ask people if they were hungry, or she'd feed them, especially the orphans that she knew from the village. She would especially be kind to them and feed them, ask them to come in and eat whatever she had. And nowadays we have a lot of people whom we call the homeless. It's just, to me, that's the same concept. Sometimes we are told not to be kind to them, but I know that's not right. So she was very, very kind. Of course, a lot of us women who are youth, it gives us extra pride. I know pridefulness isn't good, but I think this is a good pride, where one of our own has been chosen by God to become a saint. And Papa used to say, because he did know Saint Olga and others like her, the elders who have passed on. He saw their personalities, their way of life, and he would say, you know, the elders that I knew when I first came to the village, they were all like her. They all could be saints. But why did God reveal Aksabuk? And then he would kind of laugh a little bit and say, maybe those elders had a meeting of sorts wherever they are and decided to vote for Matushka Olga to represent them, or the Yupik nation. Maybe that's why she was chosen. So of course we're very happy that a Yupik lady has been chosen by God to help the people of Alaska, and not just Yupik people, but the other cultures and tribes of Alaska and the United States and Canada and the world. Because there's so much pain that people go through in those other places too.
Our next interview is with Father Michael Nikolai. He is Yupik born and raised in the village of Kwethluk also, and has many memories of Saint Olga when he was a young boy. He is an instructor at St. Herman's Seminary on Kodiak Island, and this year he teaches 2 courses, liturgics and indigenous health and healing. His paper, A Journey Between Two Worlds, an Indigenous Perspective, will be made available as a resource in next week's class. I met Father Michael at the All-American Council in Phoenix when he spoke to the youth about Saint Olga. He is husband to Matushka Anna and nephew of beloved composer Archpriest Martin Nikolai, whose liturgical music will also be featured next Tuesday during our Resources for Teaching. He is with us tonight online, will be very soon, but we will listen to his recorded talk now, as weather in Kodiak can often affect internet connections. After the video, he will be available to answer questions.
Hey, my name is Father Michael Nikolai. I come from the village of Kwethluk, Alaska, where the glorification took place for Matushka Olga. And, I had a privilege growing up to know who she was. She was my parents' godmother. And when they got married, they also, they were their sponsors. So I was young when she got sick. I was like about 3 years old, but for some reason, I known the world since I was like 2 years old, from when I was taken up into the mountains all the way in back of Kwethluk River. And our river is like a swift water, white water. And every year we would go up in the springtime, and by that time I was 2 years old. From then on I remember everything, because I remember seeing the bear and then coming down with our traditional bearskin raft that was put together by my great grandparents and a couple of my uncles. And then when we got home, that year, when we arrive in the village, normally what happens is, they greet each other to let the villagers know that, we're coming around the corner, and they use rifles to make that sound. And the people from the village would answer back, and, I remember they had this great feast when we got there, and it was at my grandparents' house when everybody came together, and they were exchanging all these information from what they were missing while they were gone. And I remember, Matushka Olga. I remember her late husband, Nikolai Michael, and a year later, in sometime in the spring, she began to get sick, and I remember my mom telling my dad that she's not looking too good. And then by midsummer, end of summer, I think it was, when she came back, she was like preparing herself and giving stuff away. And they were telling me that, she may not be around very long. And And they would tell me when they say that it's time to go see her, that we'd go over, and they were preparing all these things beforehand. They never surprised us in any way. And the nice thing about knowing her is you never left her house with an empty hand. You always had some baked good or fried bread to take. And she pretty much was like a mother to everyone, even to her grandkids. And what I would like for children to know about Matushka Olga is, because when we ourselves, we want something from our father, we normally naturally go to our mom to ask our dad for something. And Matushka Olga, in many ways, was like that for everyone. So, when you pray and ask her like you're asking your own mother, because she is very special in that way. And that's why we say she's a mother for all Alaskans and everyone that calls upon her. And the most special thing about having somebody from our own people to be canonized as a saint is like strengthening of our people to even step a little forward to becoming more humble again, or as our elders would say, yung napugod, which means we're trying to be. And our elders, they always spoke in ways that allowed us to have this greater belief, because they would always say, doing unlidak, which means in our language, when we translate it to English, it means it is never the end. And because it is never the end, we have this greater belief in Alaska that resonates with orthodoxy so well that the person falls asleep. And the other words that our elders use is that we will see each other again. In our culture, in the Yupik culture, it's taught in this way that to see each other again is to see eye to eye. When you learn to understand their teachings and the values that they have taught you in life, when you come across them, you actually gain that perspective that they had, and we see each other at the same level, reminding us that these teachings that they carry shall continue no matter if they're still there or not, or even after, I have left this world, that our teachings will still continue, because we see at this level I, meaning Tangkochirkut, that we will see each other again. And to be at the canonization, when we started the process in November from exhuming her out of the ground, I remember one of the older priests, they came up to me and he asked me, do you remember what the casket looked like? Were the handles singular, or was it all pulled together? And I told him, I remember the casket being like this brass color, and that the handle went all the way around, and it was like this continuous thing. And when we pulled her out, Father Victor, he came back up to me and he said, so you do remember all these things? And I told him, I remember every detail that happened, because I remembered I was very scared that night when she passed away. I've never seen a storm or in many ways it felt like the world was ending because, it was very cold that day before, and we were out on the river right on top of the ice. And we were getting ready to set the nets. But then when the storm came, it was like we were all on a panic mode and everything thawed out. Even the snow on the ground was gone. And these high winds were coming from somewhere, and the river unfroze again. And I remember the elders, they used to say that we only keep the body for about 3 days and then the body gets buried. And the day she was buried, everybody ate, had the after feast. Everybody took off in their skiffs, in their boats back to their villages. And the next day it was so cold. So it felt like the earth embraced her and welcomed her back. Our elders, the way they see Orthodoxy and our culture is so similar, that we came from somewhere and we shall return to where we have came from, which is normally pointing towards, we are dust, and dust we shall return. So in Matushka Olga, I don't think she ever really slept too much because, we lived right down a couple houses away from them. And back then the village wasn't too big. So before it even got bright or anything, we would see clothing hanging by her place already. And she had done everything. So when we were passing by to go to school, she would come out and give a piece of fried bread. Yeah. So when you come across the icon of Matushka Olga, the best way to ask is like asking your mom to ask your father for something. So when you ask her to pray for you, come to her as you are coming to your own mom, because she always had that great warm feeling of a real mom. And, that's why if you come to the village, you're going to find people calling her mom. And even though she might be distant relative or, closely related in a different level in our culture, they still call her mom. And everybody connects very well to her that way. She never ever really left the village much, but I remember she would be more focused on, trying to do better. And I remember her instructing my mom at one time when I had to hold my sister that she has to learn to balance and not overdo things. And in our culture, when we say it means to stop and think about it before we act upon it. And I believe Christ tells us in this way in the scriptures, be very quick to listen and slow to speak. In other words, think about it before you say something. In order to come out in a more, as we say in our culture, more human way, more Christian way, and not feeding fire for fire. But Matushka Olga was very special in this way to our people because she reminds us the great values our elders held and the unknown saints that she even walked among, even that I always say that those were our elders. our elders were the ones that truly upheld the truth and truly upheld how to be a person, a true Christian. So this was a very special event that happened in my village that, I hope everybody took to heart. And I do know for sure, if you come to the village, you're going to find, welcoming people, and you'll leave gained with a lot of, I don't know how to really explain it in English, but it's like this greater sense of awareness or meaning to the faith. Is there anything else I should cover? So when the glorification of Matushka Olga happened in my village, everybody started getting prepared, because now in this modern day and age, we're so connected technology wise. We had cell phone services that allowed us to meet the arriving bishops and metropolitan, at the beach. And in our traditional Yukon Kuskokwim way, whenever a hierarch is coming to a village, they greet them with rifles and shotguns. This event, I think, was most unique that I've ever seen in my life, because I never did ever expect so many swallows to be hovering over, in circles and very fast. But I do remember one of the guys at the funeral said, "Look, a bird," and it spiraled all the way up. That's what it brought me back to remind me of what the funeral service was like. But there's all these swallows all over, and they followed right from the beach all the way up into the church. And then when her body came out to go to the grave and back to the church, I remember feeling this very warm feeling, and at first I was kind of skeptic, because I was thinking, the hierarchs are not going to like it, because this is the time when the bugs are out, all these mosquitoes. But it was so hot that they couldn't be out. And to witness something like this, really opened my mind in a way that I realized, all these things I didn't really have to worry about, because I have no control over these things. All I could do is pray. So once we start getting into that, moving to the church and getting ready for everything, I started staying more focused on prayer. And when I went to Russia back in 2017, I had a chance to go venerate Saint Seraphim of Sarov in Divivo over there. And I've never felt so much energy from a reliquary that felt like a furnace's heat, but without the burning heat, but this warm feeling. And that's when I started, feeling that again, was during the glorification. And I realized, when I looked back at everyone else in my family members and my relatives in the village, I could see this great change within themselves. And everybody was so focused on being thankful. Most importantly, I think our people were so thankful that, she wasn't taken from the village. And I think this is going to help everyone to be more strengthened in that way, in knowing that, we do also have control, and that in this event was very overwhelming for some people, that they constantly had to vent. And I was so reminded of so many things when she was around, because a lot of these older people were telling great stories of their time with her, and it was like a repeat from their generation to mine. So it was like reawakening things that I almost forgot, but were still there. So it really strengthened my belief in our people, in our way of living, that in this simple life can lead to great show great people like her to come out.
That's it.
So, for some reason, I always kind of knew that she was somebody very special. At one time, Matushka, Olga, she told me, she kind of looked at me like I was puzzled or something, and she goes, "You're trying to figure something out." And she said, "Once you learn to walk around that table, then you'll start understanding." And at one time, after years after she passed, I was trying to figure something out. So I pulled our table out a little bit and I walked around it. And I was thinking, that don't work. But then I realized it after ordination. I grabbed the gospel and I was walking around and I was thinking, this is what she meant. Because as I was walking around, I was realizing, that what she had said was something that was coming to my mind as I was going out with the gospel and thinking about what am I going to say, and it really strengthened my understanding at that time. And then for all of this stuff to go on in the village, it really caught my attention. And also, I would kind of say, because I'm so greedy, that it gave me leverage with the students to kind of pull them even closer, and understanding, and want to understand more about other saints also. And I was kind of explaining to them how these saints are so connected in this so similar values and understanding, and how they hold on to these great things. You could compare Father Herman and Bishop John of Shanghai and San Francisco. They're so exactly the same. And then you have Matushka Olga. She could be equal to several different saints. One would be Natalia. If you look at Adrian and Natalia, she encouraged her husband to go above and beyond. So, and I always hope women take that into action, that to be even more for their husbands who are in ministry, and and for men to look towards her and ask her for strengthening, because she brings peace and this great understanding of to put yourself in somebody else's shoes. So, as an Indigenous Alaska Native, it it was. I'd have to say it was an amazing place to grow up in. It was Queethluck, because I grew up in two cultural worlds, which is my Christianity, along with my traditional Yupik traditions and backgrounds. Our elders, when I was growing up, they had three different places that were tailored to age for Sunday school. And all three of these places had an elder. And the older kids ended up at Matushka Olga's house. I remember sneaking away and going over so that I could have, something warm. Because she always had bread or something baked. I remember sneaking away over there because my mom at that time, she was helping doing something, and I just kind of sneaked in and grabbed my young sister, and she's like maybe four years younger than me. I remember going in so I could sit and eat and listen, and I remember them talking about our traditional values and how our traditional values are so very similar to such as like the Ten Commandments and how to direct yourself. And they added on reminding them who we are is that we represent our mom and dad as soon as we walk out the door. And then we represent our village when we leave our village. So always remembering who you are and where you come from, and having that value foundation, it gives you the sense of how to direct yourself carefully around others so that you don't fall in that wrong direction. And then at one time, my dad's mom, she said to me, "You should come with me." And I said, "To where?" And she said in her language, "Bingai." And I was thinking, okay, because it meant Wednesday night Bible study. And that was with the adults. I remember going over with her maybe 4 times, I think it was. But one of those times, I remember Matushka Olga was with the women, and I was sitting with my grandma, because I used to be afraid of some of the elders. And my grandma, she was this little lady, but she was like this super tough lady. So I was right by her, and I remember hearing her talking about how important it is to start teaching before we lose, the teachings, or they're just going to become lesser. And how important it is to push for these teachings so that the respect, that greater respect can always be there. And at one time, I remember we were about to take off bird hunting that early in the morning, I was told. And I kind of looked at her and I said, we were going early in the morning because my great grandfather, the one I called Dad, he told me, go tell her so she'll give us bread or something to take. So I remember running over and telling her that we're going to take off hunting in the morning. And I told her, and she was like, what time? And I said, probably when you're sleeping, you know, joking around. But, I got up around, well, I was woken up around 3:30 and I was told to start getting ready. I started bringing stuff down. I looked over, she already had done laundry. And this is very, very early in the morning. And I was like, oh no, I said something wrong. But she did give us bread to take. And all she did was she giggled and she goes, I'm not sleeping. So it was like I said, it always felt like you went to your mom's house, nowhere else. There was always that feeling. So the music that I grew up in the village, it was the church down below, where they exhumed her body out of. That old church, it was, from what I understand in the readings, that in the culture histories, that 1929, that old church was beginning construction. So by 1935, it was actually consecrated and used. It was probably used before then, but it was constructed about 1929. And my great grandfather, Nikolai Ipchuk, was the first priest in the village. So when he passed away in 1962 with a heart attack, Father Nikolai O'Michael stepped up and became the priest. So a lot of the songs that were always sung were primarily in Yupik and Slavonic. Once in a great while we would hear English growing up. But in that particular church down below, I think Pascha was like the most greatest thing that there was during that time. But then us young boys who weren't serving or got there too late, we would be outside the church listening to all these music, like penguins trying to move to the middle to stay warm. So it was this constant movement. But I remember the hymns and how I would listen carefully, which kind of warmed me up and kept me focused on, okay, so this is what we're singing about. And when I started learning English and started reading a little more, when I came to the seminary, I wanted to learn as much as I could about our faith. Because there's a lot of elders, when we would ask, why do we do this? Their answer usually was, we've always done it that way, just do it that way. And it would bother me, because I wanted to know more. And when I came to the seminary, I studied as hard as I could to understand a lot of these things. My main goal was just to become a Sunday school teacher, nothing more. But God really makes different plans for each of us. So those songs, as I got older and moving away from the village, I would miss so much of them. And when I did come back after almost 30 years, I almost forgotten some of them. And during the glorification, when they pulled all these things out, I heard my uncle, Father Martin, say, we're going to be singing as much as we can of what she used to hear in her time. And, my mind was uplifted even more to be more focused. So my focus gave away from the service part, but started I was more in tune with the music, because growing up I stood with the choir all the time. I didn't really try to serve in the altar too much, because I love singing, and it was trying to ride a bicycle. As I was singing with them, I would make mistakes here and there after so many years of not doing it. But then, afterwards, it was like my heart was completely full, to hear all this great music that we used to hear before so much English came out. So it was a very special moment, I think. So this traditional Yupik song originated from St. Mary's. My wife's grandma, great grandma, kind of pulled me aside and she said, "Listen carefully. I don't want you to forget this song." And she kind of said, I kind of asked her, "Okay, what does it mean?" And she says, "Just listen." And it starts with asking the Creator to come and be with us, asking the Creator to be our staff and our guide, and asking the Creator to allow us to journey in this calm water. And when we ask for something, even in our time, answer our prayers. And the second part is, even when our generation to comes, continuously answer their prayers as you have answered ours. So it starts like this. Adanach bod. Adanach bod. Apta bod. Konach kon. Ayagan echte gut. Ayoli magi gut. Inili magi gut. Makunik mani. Apta kamta. Adoch kampnek katamamta. Atanach bod, tapta bod, konach kon, ayagan echte gut, ayuli magigut, binili magigut, makunig mani, hapta kamta, adoch kampnek katamamta. Yumia maganach pakima kingulemta aganach pakima makun khamani haptakata atoch kaitna kaslaita atanach pot aptapot konach kon ayaganech tekut ayuli makikut inili makikut Makunik mani hapta kamta atoch kamnak patamamta.
Thank you, Father Michael, for your beautiful reflections and song. I don't know if Father Michael was able to join us. We were hoping he would be. Oh, he's here.
I see his name.
Okay. There he is. Hello, Father Michael.
Hi, how are you guys? Sorry I was late. I had to drive.
No, it was perfect timing. Father Michael is going to be available for about 15 minutes for questions. If you have a question, raise your hand and you'll need to turn on your microphone.
Your digital hand.
Yeah. You can go ahead and speak. No? I guess we don't have any questions. Anyone?
Yep, we
Yeah,
do.
okay.
Natalie Marino.
Natalie, go ahead, Natalie.
Hi, good evening. I have a question. So I am currently a teaching assistant for the ministry of my church, St. John the Theologian, and I wanted to ask for any recommendations that you might have on involving and really curating a sense of orthodoxy outside of the church, especially for our youth who are becoming teenagers, and how they might feel like they can carry orthodoxy into the outside world, outside of the classroom and outside from Sunday school.
Yeah, this past weekend's gospel, because we're on the old calendar, it really reflects upon not being afraid of correcting somebody, because we all do have somebody that fell away from the faith. And because our younger generation feel like they're not very well taught, they're always afraid to see something, or they feel ashamed because they feel like they're not part of something. So in order to overcome something like that, you have to create this environment where they build confidence. And the best way to do it is to interact with each other, kind of helping each other, teaching one another. I hope that answered your question.
Yes, thank you.
There another question? Any other questions? I don't see any hands, but if you have a question, just go ahead and unmute yourself and speak.
Hi, Father Michael. It's Phyllis. I don't have any questions, but I just want to thank you for the beautiful reflection, St. Olga, and your homeland. It was very beautiful. That's all I have to say, but no questions. Thank you very much.
Hello, I'm Matushka, Tamara's dad,
Hi,
Father
Dad.
Nicholas.
It's waving.
I just wanted to say how pleased I am that you have this program and you're informing everyone of Matushka Olga. I knew her when I was a young priest in Alaska, and I brought her the Holy Sacraments when she was in the hospital. And then I had the occasion on several times to visit her in Kwiklook and be at her home and eat at her table, and also to pray for her because she was then beginning to suffer from cancer. This was in 1976. And Father Nikolai, as he was called, her husband, and I became very good friends. And I invited him to come with me to the All-American Council in Cleveland in 1976. And he traveled with me. It was the first time and the only time in his life that he was outside of Alaska. And it certainly was an eye-opener for him in many ways. But Father Michael Alexa is the one who really came to know her, and Matushka Ksenia. And it's good that they were both part of your program tonight. And I just want to thank you for being here to share in this wonderful presentation that you all gave tonight. God bless you.
We still love you guys and we miss you guys up here in Alaska.
We miss you too.
Are there any other questions or comments?
If I may ask a question, it's Matushka Rachel.
Hi.
Hi. Uh, Thank you for doing this. I had a question just if I guess it's kind of a specific question, but is there any advice you could give on anything about any advice for a Matushka or mothers in general?
Father Michael?
Well, yeah, I think, again, Matushka Olga was a great example. I think if the more you guys do retreat with each other's as Matushki, you're going to increase each other's confidence in ways that, pulling out what causes all these struggles and talking with one another and kind of going through that, what we kind of call in my culture like debriefing, but it's done in more of like you kind of explain like how hard it was and what you how you learn to overcome. The sharing of information is a way to build strength with especially with each others. And that's something my culture tries to teach is that, we talk about our faults and we talk about what we should have done and how we could do better in order to move, as we always say in my culture, in order to become yupik, in order to become a person, you have to go through all these trials. You have to learn how to overcome. So I think the more retreats you guys do in this way, talking about the hard stuff and what got you through it and what you could have done better, I think are like the main three keys that really develop great, you know, uh, union, and also it helps new Matushki to see what they're up against. So it's kind of like saying this lies ahead of you.
Matushka Rachel, next week on our Tuesday class, when we talk about resources, we will also have some information about other Yupik Matushki who have responded about how wonderful it is to have Saint Olga, a Matushka, as a saint for us. So we will talk more about that next week also.
Okay, awesome. Thank you for your advice and thank you for that. I'll try to be on that call.
Are there any more questions? Go ahead, George.
There I am. Okay, thank you. Hello, Father Michael. I just wanted to share just a couple of observations, not really any questions, but um, I was fortunate to, along with my wife, to be at the All-American Council in Phoenix this year. And I know it may not have been quite the same as what was experienced at the actual glorification, but to us, it was a very touching moment to experience the vigils and the vigil service, which I thought was had me in tears half the time, listening to the hymns about her. And I felt like, oh my gosh, it just shows that it's very simple to do the work of God if we would just allow ourselves to do it. And I was kind of funny. I was also thinking to myself that boy, I guess, I almost wish I was brought up in a village like yours because it was like we have all these distractions going on in our life, and we tend to think that there are so many important things, and we just allow all the love of God to kind of fall away and not be part of our life on a daily basis. And I have to say I've struggled very hard to capture that just by experience that information, that vigil with Matushka Olga and getting to see and venerate her relics. God bless you all, really. And at the same time, the next day at the liturgy, Bishop Daniel said that God puts us where we're supposed to be. So I guess I'm not supposed to be in the village. I'm supposed to learn from you and take it back to our village.
right, the village of your parish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Matrona, Carrie has a question. Go ahead.
Yes, hello. I would like to thank you, Matushka, tomorrow for doing this workshop on Matushka Olga, and I really enjoyed hearing the reflections from Matushka Xenia and Father Michael. And I think I wanted to add to what the gentleman, the previous person, George, said about, I think there's so much we could learn from the Yupik people in today's culture, and where there's so much banality because of where priorities are with so many young people have become so insular because of misuse of the internet and all the social media. But the best social medium is our togetherness in the Orthodox Church and that timelessness. And we just need that so much in today's world. And I love too how you said, Matushka Tamara, how you grew up being part of the choir for as long as you could remember, and just that family atmosphere. And we just need that. We need that today. We need to all become true Yupiks.
Well said, Carrie. Eugenia and Mark asked the question, will you be sharing miracles next week when we have our class for teaching resources? We'll be covering some of the miracles, yes. And Catherine asked the question, I have heard that the native culture is quiet and respectful and serving. Sometimes I have a hard time separating the culture from the descriptions of Her Holiness. Was this difference very clear for those who are from Alaska and familiar with the culture? Father
Well,
Michael?
you know, in our culture, we always teach there's a time to be quiet. And that's usually when you're attacked. And our elders, they teach. They're not doing it to you. They're doing it to themselves. And the best person you could be at that moment is the best listener. So whatever they're throwing at you, we have to see it as a blessing. That's why we say the Beatitudes, you know. And that's a time of showing great respect of who we are, where we come from, what family we represent, what community we represent. You know, it's a time to show people how much respect your family can offer through you. You know, just like that saying, as soon as you walk out the door, the first person you represent is your mom and dad. You know, how you act and react tells people exactly what your home environment is like. So that's the part of the culture that we're taught to be quiet during those times. But there's also a time to correct. You know, there's also a time to actually step in and, we always see in our culture, you could be either older or an elder. You know, and the time to be an elder is to correct somebody in the right direction. You know, that's our serving part of the culture. And it's not separate to us as Orthodox and Indigenous people, because all these aspects were already put in there for us. And also, we always see you already have these values and great stuff within you. We just need to reawaken it, because sometimes it goes dormant and we forget how to forgive. We forget how to love. You know, we forget these small little things and take things for granted. So when we reawaken, our elders say, you have to be ready to feed them. So you have to become an elder at that moment. You know, it doesn't come with age in our culture. I hope that answered some of it.
Yes, thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead and speak if you have a question. Rebecca is asking, next week, if time permits, can we hear about miracles? Yes, yes, we will. Any other questions? The recording from tonight will be made available to all of you when it is available to us. We will send it all to your emails. And next week, we will have videos and video links for you that are recaps of the consecration and other aspects of the canonization of Saint Olga, as well as liturgical music we will learn from the village, a play that can be used in your parishes during holiday times about her life, and then many, many other resource lists and links that you can use for teaching children and adults as well. I want to thank Archbishop Michael for blessing this project and supporting and being with us tonight. And I want to thank Father Michael Nikolai for his beautiful words, and for Matushka Ksenia Alexa for hers. And I need to thank my husband, who is the technical expert here, and I could not do any of this without him.
Very good.
And I thank all of you for coming. We had over 75 people who signed up to come, and so we will have at least that many spots next week for those who will join us again next week. If you can't be with us next week, we will be recording that session, so I will make those recordings available to you as well.